Silence can be louder than screaming, because silence is where decisions get made. What viewers saw as another quiet reaction was not hesitation. It was a system activating. On the surface, the family was still talking unity, still performing togetherness. But beneath that performance, a pattern had already locked in, one person disengaging while others kept bleeding emotionally. That pause wasn't confusion. It was advantage. When one side stops reacting, power shifts. Control consolidates. And everyone else keeps negotiating a relationship that's already been abandoned. The real damage wasn't emotional, it was structural. Time, money, legacy, and children all kept moving forward under the illusion of partnership, while the outcome was already decided. This wasn't chaos. It was strategy hiding inside silence. And tonight, we're not speculating, we're tracing the pattern, the beneficiaries, and the cost this quiet moment set in motion, using footage most people never re-examined. It doesn't arrive with shouting, slammed doors, or dramatic exits. Sometimes, it happens quietly. In a look held just a second too long. A breath taken at the wrong moment. Or a reaction that cameras captured, but never explained. This is the story of one such moment. A reaction that fans now believe changed everything. Not a speech. Not a confrontation. Just a pause. And what that pause may have revealed about the collapse of a family. The show promised transparency, real emotions, real conflict, real consequences. But reality television is never fully real. Hundreds of hours of footage are filmed each season. Less than 2% makes it to air. Editors decide what becomes a storyline, and what becomes background noise. And sometimes, the most important moments are not the loudest ones, but the ones that slip through, unnoticed. Until now, what if the most explosive moment in the family's history wasn't a fight, but a reaction no one explained? Introducing the moment. The clip fans are talking about comes from a late series episode during the family's emotional unraveling. The context. A conversation about separation, loyalty, and responsibility. A discussion that should have centered on healing, but instead exposed fractures. As another wife speaks, voice controlled, words careful, the camera cuts briefly to Robyn. No dialogue, no confessional, just her face. She exhales. Her eyes narrow slightly, her mouth tightens. Then, silence. The shot lasts less than 3 seconds. At the time, most viewers missed it. But years later, fans are revisiting that moment, and seeing something different. Why fans are rewatching now? Reality television doesn't exist in a vacuum. It lives on through rewatches, clips, and online discussion. As the family publicly fractured, divorces confirmed, relationships severed, fans began asking retrospective questions. When did this really start? Was there a turning point? Reddit threads, Facebook groups, and YouTube comment sections began cross-referencing episodes. And one clip kept resurfacing. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. When viewers slow the footage down, what exactly are they seeing, and why does it matter now? Breaking down the reaction. Frame by frame, fans describe the moment as a visible shift from empathy to detachment. A restrained but unmistakable sign of irritation. A reaction inconsistent with the spoken narrative of unity. Body language analysts caution against overinterpretation. And they're right to do so. No single expression proves intent. But patterns matter. And this was not an isolated moment. Pattern recognition. Fans began compiling similar moments. Robyn remaining silent during emotional disclosures. Facial reactions contradicting verbal reassurance. Confessional interviews that reframed events after the fact. These moments were subtle, but together, they formed a pattern. A growing disconnect between what was said and what was shown. What happens when reality TV accidentally documents emotional truth it can't narrate away? Historical callbacks. Earlier seasons framed Robyn as the emotional bridge, the peacekeeper, the stabilizing force. But as seasons progressed, the editing shifted. Scenes became more fragmented. Group conversations shortened. Confessionals grew more defensive. Longtime viewers noticed something else. Conflict increasingly happened around Robyn, but rarely to her. Legal and production context. Reality shows operate under strict legal frameworks. Participants sign contracts that limit what can be shown, how it can be framed, and when footage can be revisited. Editors cannot invent reactions, but they can contextualize them. Or choose not to. Which raises a key question fans are asking now. Why wasn't this reaction addressed on screen? If nothing was wrong, why was nothing explained? Fan interpretation versus fact. It's important to draw a line between evidence and interpretation. No producer has confirmed the reaction is intentional. No cast member has publicly acknowledged it. But fan discourse has been relentless. Quotes from online discussions include, "That look said more than any argument. That's when I realized the family was already over. She didn't argue, she disengaged." Disengagement, psychologists note, is often the final stage of relational conflict. Emotional power dynamics. One theory gaining traction is not about villainy, but power. Emotional power doesn't always show up as control. Sometimes, it shows up as withdrawal. The moment fans fixate on may represent a decision already made. Not anger. Acceptance. What if the collapse didn't begin with conflict, but with emotional checkout? Post-event consequences. After this episode aired, family meetings became less frequent. Group scenes felt staged rather than organic. Confessionals grew more isolated. Within a few seasons, multiple marriages formally ended. In hindsight, fans argue the signs were already there. Hidden in plain sight. Why TLC may have moved on. Networks avoid dwelling on moments that complicate narrative clarity. A reaction without dialogue can't be defended, contextualized, or refuted. So it becomes background. But background moments are often where truth lives. What else might viewers have missed while focusing on the obvious drama? Community reckoning. Today, the clip circulates as a symbol. Not proof. Not accusation. But a reminder. Reality television captures reality, even when it doesn't mean to. And audiences, once passive, are now active analysts. Long-term implications. The legacy of this moment isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Viewers are no longer satisfied with surface narratives. They watch reactions, silences, what goes unexplained. And that shift is changing how reality TV is consumed forever. The moment TLC didn't highlight may not have been intentional. But it was consequential. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't need a storyline. It just needs time. And eventually, someone notices. In reality television, silence is rarely accidental. Every season of an unscripted series produces hundreds of hours of raw footage. From that material, editors are tasked not just with storytelling, but with risk management. Moments that are ambiguous, emotionally charged, or open to multiple interpretations often present a problem. They cannot be easily contextualized. They cannot be cleanly resolved. And most importantly, they cannot be defended if challenged. This is where what industry professionals refer to as editorial silence comes into play. Instead of addressing a moment directly, production may choose to move past it. No follow-up questions. No confessional clarification. No narrative framing. Not because the moment was unimportant, but because it was too complex. A reaction without dialogue offers no control over interpretation. Once it airs, it belongs to the audience. In this case, the reaction was left unexplained. And in reality television, unexplained moments often linger longer than explained ones. Because when viewers are not told what to think, they begin to think for themselves. What's missing becomes more noticeable than what's shown. Networks like TLC operate under strict legal and reputational considerations. They cannot imply intent without confirmation. They cannot speculate on internal dynamics. So instead, the story continues. Even if something underneath it has already shifted. This is not censorship. It is strategy. And it leaves certain moments suspended in time, waiting for audiences to revisit them later. Psychologists have long noted that human attention is drawn not just to action, but to interruption. When an expected emotional response doesn't occur, the brain flags it as significant. In everyday life, silence during conflict often signals something deeper than anger. It can indicate emotional withdrawal, resignation, or a decision already made internally. For long-term viewers of reality television, this effect is magnified. Audiences form what researchers call parasocial relationships, one-sided emotional bonds with people they watch regularly. Over time, viewers believe they understand not just what participants say, but how they usually react. So when a familiar reaction changes, it stands out. Not consciously at first, but instinctively. That is why so many viewers report noticing something off during rewatches. They may not be able to articulate it immediately, but they feel it. In contrast, arguments feel familiar. They follow patterns. They resolve, or at least move forward. Silence does not. Silence leaves space. And in that space, interpretation grows. This is why reaction moments, especially unaddressed ones, tend to age differently than overt conflicts. They become clearer over time, not less. To understand why this reaction has gained so much attention, it helps to examine what followed. In the episodes leading up to this moment, group discussions still existed. Even if they were tense. Decisions were debated. Emotions were expressed. The structure of family dialogue remained intact. After this episode, that structure began to change. Scenes involving all adults became shorter. Conversations ended without resolution. Confessionals became more individual, and more defensive. Importantly, reactions replaced dialogue. Instead of disagreement, there was distance. Instead of negotiation, silence. This shift was gradual enough to feel natural at the time. But in hindsight, viewers now describe it as a turning point. Not because of what happened on screen, but because of what stopped happening afterward. Conflict still existed, but engagement did not. In long-running family systems, disengagement often precedes separation. Not legally, not publicly, emotionally. And once emotional disengagement occurs, reconciliation becomes increasingly unlikely. From that perspective, the reaction fans now focus on does not appear sudden. It appears final. Online discussions have produced multiple interpretations of this moment. Some viewers believe the reaction reflects emotional self-protection. Others see it as quiet acceptance. A smaller group views it as editorial coincidence. What these theories share is not accusation, but reflection. They are attempts to understand a family dynamic that no longer exists. And in that sense, the reaction has become symbolic rather than evidentiary. A marker of change, not proof, but perspective. Join the investigation. If you're done accepting surface narratives, signal it. Like this video so this analysis reaches viewers who miss the warning signs. Comment with what you notice that never got explained. Subscribe to stay inside this ongoing case file. And continue with the linked playlist, where we break down the moments that quietly rewrote the family's future, frame by frame.